Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Smitty Middy Show exclusive, the first of the Smitty Middy Show exclusives. Middy, this is really exciting for us, and we have the pleasure to be joined today by Ryan Furnish. Ryan is one of the hosts of the Talking Buds podcast, and he joins us today to talk a little bit about the NHL, his podcast, and of course, the Maple Leafs, who I am not a fan of. Ryan, thanks.
Man. Hey, buddy, how's it going? Gentlemen, thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, we got a Sens fan over here, so I spend most of my day just making fun of him. That's pretty much
buddy.
That's most of our show.
It's all right. They got the rebuild going. I'll give them that.
We'll call it better.
Yep.
Yeah, for 2 years until the owner just sells the team for a pack of crackers.
I'm waiting for it.
I'm a huge fan
honestly.
of the new unis.
Yeah, they are nice.
Yeah.
You bought one, didn't you?
It's on the way. I'm excited.
Yeah.
When you're a Sens fan, you got to really take the small victories and run with them. All right, let's start with just the Buds here. Obviously, what a huge offseason for them. Which signing do you really like the best? Because I'll tell you, probably my favorite to start off. I'm partial to the Wayne Simmonds signing, but I'm going to couple that with Joe Thornton, where they're two responsible guys, they're two big guys, they're two leaders in the dressing room. Those are my favorite. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm with the Thornton signing, and the reason is because they bring in like a Wayne Simmonds, and that's bringing in one guy. And Jake Muzzin was kind of in talking the team toughness aspect of this team, which I thought they had to work on the most through this offseason. So you bring in a guy like Wayne Simmonds, and it's like that's one guy kind of helping out Jake Muzzin in the team toughness category and team leadership category. So I like when you bring in Thornton and you bring in Bogosian, because it's not just like, here's one dude coming to help. It's like now we got like three guys in the locker room, going to add some new flavor. And Thornton's as a beauty anyways, right? Like the reputation around the league, like he's jumbo for a reason. So just plucking him in that locker room with a lot of these incumbent Leaf players, I just thought that signing was absolutely massive.
So the Leafs right now have Jumbo Joe kind of up on the first line. You think that's going to stick? Like, do you think Joe can keep up with these first line players around the league?
No, I do not. And I get frustrated with people taking the opening day line so seriously. It's like, take a look at the schedule for this season. Like, it's every other day. Do you think a guy in his 40s is going to be playing every other night top minutes? Like, absolutely not. But the thing I didn't mind is you start him at the top and you let him work his way down, right? It's like, it's not like he starts on the fourth line and then somebody gets injured in the top six and you got to bring him up. I like how, like, you start him at the top, you see what happens. Obviously he has the pedigree to play there, but his age, I don't think will allow it over the year and the schedule. So I think he'll eventually work his way down, but it's a good story for all the fans, right? It's like you bring in a guy, everyone's most excited about him. Why not throw him with Marner and Matthews right off the bat?
Yeah, and it's not like obviously he's not going to be able to keep up with these guys, but he's also hasn't been able to keep up with the league for a couple of years now. But he's a guy that's going to be able to protect your two stars too. Like if somebody takes a run at Matthews, if you don't think he's going to be over there with his stick around their head, like that's something that they've been missing for a long time too.
Yeah, and it's just and Leaf fans, like the majority of Leaf fans I find, are just a mark for how he's going to be in the dressing room, right? It's just there's a lot of immaturity you've seen the past couple of years with this team and some shortcomings with playing tough or being consistent. And it's like, hopefully a guy who's hungry to win his first cup and is hungry for some playoff success is going to get in there and be like, boys, there's a Zamboni driver in the net right now. Let's start shooting the puck on net. Let's not sit back. We get pucks on net, like just little things like that, or just the way they collapse, right? Like they just have such a bad habit of just collapsing and things start to go sideways for them. And just having that voice in the room being like, I've been through this. You guys are a damn good hockey team. Let's start playing like it. Just that influence.
Yeah, I think that's probably honestly the biggest thing that I like we talked about. I'm not a Leafs fan, right? But when I look at that signing, that's got to be one of the biggest things they were looking at, right? Is someone that can come into the dressing room and make a presence there, as opposed to he's going to make a presence on the ice, I think. But like you said, it's not going to be in a lot of minutes during the game.
You're also getting them in a league minimum too. It's not like you're going out there and spending money.
That's the best part about all these guys that are in their late 30s and 40s is that they're all playing for less than $1 million, or for Simmonds, like a buck and a half. Like that's great. You get nothing to lose. It's not a lot of a risk there, but could be a lot of reward for sure.
Yeah, and for a team that has so much money, into their top 4 guys. Like, you need to find those little fringe players. And maybe something that's gone under the radar a bit too is like Jumbo Joe has been playing for a couple months too. He was playing overseas, and for all accounts, he was actually playing pretty well.
Yeah, and you just hope that you can get, like, for me personally, I just hope he can chip in when he can chip in, but I don't expect him to go out and have a year like he had when he was leading the league in points, or when he was like a slam dunk fantasy player, when he knew he was going to get 60 assists in a season. Like, I'm just trusting in the fact that his knowledge and his presence is just going to make a difference for them.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the other signings. We've touched on Simmer, we've touched on Joe. Who else do you really like? Who else are you really excited to get to see on the ice this year?
I think I'm most excited to see Mikko Lehtinen and see what he can do, because I think the Leafs have a knack for plucking half decent players out of the KHL or international signings. And from the blue and white scrimmage the other night, like, everyone was all over him. Twitter was pumping, like, oh, look at this guy. He's going to be unreal. He's got great offensive instincts. And I was pretty impressed as well. And anything to add to that decor, which obviously is one of their biggest weaknesses, like, I am for sure looking for him to play a role for this hockey team.
Yeah, they did a lot too to boost that D line. Like, I like the bottom two with Lehtinen and Bogosian. Like, just that line right there. They're heavy. They can play. They're responsible defensively. You're not just throwing out 6 guys who are going to rush the puck either. Like, you give Riley someone to play beside that's maybe going to stay home a little bit more, but still has the offensive upside.
Yeah.
It's just really hard for me to find anything they did wrong. And with that, do you think, like, this Canadian division, the Scotiabank North or whatever it's called,
Scotiabank North, yeah,
is that it's got to be the Leafs to like lose, right?
Yeah, my expectations for them to win the division. I think they have the most talent, and they got the highest paid roster, so they got the most expectations. And I think it's their division to lose. I'm with you 100%. That's my expectation.
Yeah, and they're at the point here where, like, last year, let's give them a pass because, again, you've heard it 100 times before, such a weird year with, going into the bubble, having that break in the middle, whatever. We'll give them a pass. Great comeback. You technically missed the playoffs. But this year, if you don't go at least a round deep, it's a huge disappointment. And now you're kind of looking at, well, do we have to move some of these guys to free up some of this cap space?
Yeah, this is a massive year. Like, we were sitting thinking about what we're going to talk for preseason chatter on our podcast, and it just dawned on me, like, this is a big year for this team. It was nice going out and getting all the signings and finally kind of listening to that certain part of the fan base that were clamoring for toughness and veteran leadership, but that's done now, and it's time to go win a couple rounds in the playoffs. And you're right, if they don't do that, at least a round, 2 rounds, then they got to look towards trading one of their guys in their core. Like, that's just inevitable at that point, because I don't know what you do. It's been like, it'll be the 5th year that they miss out on something, like, and they can't go, especially first round. Like, oh, please no. Like,
hey, the good news is it's not going to be Boston this year. Yeah, it's not going to be Boston.
It won't be Boston. But, like, from the outside looking in, from the Leafs fan base, right? I mean, I'm going to sit here and I can say as a Sens fan, I don't want to see you guys succeed, but I can see it's got to be frustrating, man. Honestly, it's got to be frustrating year in and year out, knowing you have such a talented team and then going nowhere. I look at the Sens back in 2017, who quite honestly didn't have a great hockey team and went to Game 7 of the conference finals, right? Are the expectations something that, the Leafs are getting held back by, the pressure holding them back from moving on in the playoffs?
I would certainly not hope so. I just think their biggest problem has been they had a crazy coach for a bit who obviously did not get along with the team, as in Babcock and some of the younger players. And I also think that they've had too many guys who kind of play the same game. Like, like Kasperi Kapanen, Andreas Janssen, Marner, Nylander, Matthews. Like, they're all offensive heavy guys. I know Matthews getting better with his 2-way game, but a lot of guys who were just pure skilled players. And I thought that you mix that with the lack of depth in the blue line and the odd time that Freddie Anderson had to make a big save. Like, it's just time for them to step up. Like, it's time for them to win a playoff round.
Yeah, and the odd time Freddie has to make a save, it seems like it seems like he's making, like, that's all he's doing is making big saves, because this, like, the defensive core was so depleted for so long, again, because you have so much money built into the top 4 that you don't have money to go out and spend. And when you, like, have, my problem is, who do you sell in the top 4? Because I mean, Tavares and Matthews, I think, are just going nowhere. And between Marner and Nylander's probably making too much money, and I think Marner just demands too much.
Yeah, I've always been. You listen to our podcast. I've always never been a huge fan of William Nylander. I think he's got all the talent in the world. He's got a great shot. He's the ability to get 70 to 80 points a year if he's on his game. But I just think the way he brings it night in, night out, if he's not contributing offensively, I find that a lot of the times he's just standing around and watching. And he would be the guy that I would be ready to move on with. Even though if you look at the contracts with him and Marner, like Marner's obviously getting paid a lot more. And if you compare their games, it's like, hey, Marner's a little bit better, but they're pretty close. They're pretty similar dudes in terms of like their skill level. But I just think that Marner lends so much more with his ability on the PK, his back checking ability is better. I would be looking to move William Nylander if things go south this year.
Yeah, the problem is, I feel like it would just be a dump, and you're probably getting into that spot where it might not be a first going the other way, but you're gonna have to give something up too. Because I mean, as good as Nylander is, he's not. I don't think he's up to his contract, and you're probably gonna, like I said, have to send something the other way.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Might have to eat some cash, but they can't do that because their cap
Exactly.
is so heavy.
That was,
I
yeah. It was one thing that was frustrating with Dubas when he said, "Hey, we're gonna get all these 4 guys signed." It's like, well, okay, but now you've told them that you're willing to pay whatever the hell they want you to pay. Like, you need to do this within a framework that's going to allow you to build a team. Now, I think they built a pretty good team around that money, but I mean, you just you trap yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. The dumbest thing Kyle Dubas ever did was go on that podcast and say, "We can and we will." Like that was so stupid, man. Like, why did he do that? He put himself in a corner and he put himself in a no-win situation. He had to get those guys signed, or else he looked like an idiot. And frankly, he kind of got bent over in all negotiations. Like, do
Well,
you think he
yeah.
won a negotiation with any of those guys?
No, I mean, I don't mind the Matthews one because kind of going into Matthews, it'd be like, here's your checkbook. Tell me what the hell you want. But when you start with Nylander, it's like, okay, now you're kind of setting the precedent. And if you're going to overpay a little bit for Nylander, Marner's going to go, well, I'm this much better than him, so I'm going to make that money. Whereas the Nylander contract, maybe a little bit more, but kind of looks better on a Marner line. I think he just did it all backwards, and it was his first really signing, and he didn't look good doing it.
Yeah, and I think he kind of got stuck as well. Like, you can't let go of these guys. Like, these are your top guys. Like, there's gonna be a money like a price that's set, and they just they had like some weird timing. Like you look at it's just the comparables around the league for what other guys make for how much they contribute, and for some reason the Leafs in those 2 years where they were in the Nylander and Marner negotiations, just the numbers got out of whack. Like just out of whack. Like I can't believe that like Brad Marchand makes what he makes and what he contributes. That's why it's frustrating when you see Nylander and Marner like take a night off. It's like, boys, like you're not on your entry levels anymore. Like it's time to like there's a lot of expectation on you, and this fan base expects a lot, like night in, night out. Don't give me this half stuff. Like I just think the expectation on them, and they just haven't lived up to it, in my opinion, yet. And this is the year they need to.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be. I'm gonna be a typical Leaf guy here, and kind of look in way too much into last night's uh, scrimmage, or last night for when we're recording this, but
over the weekend.
Over the weekend, their scrimmage there, a 7-3 game. Like this is supposed to be kind of a defensive. They're supposed to be building a defensive team. How much do we look into that 7-3 score?
Well, this is tough. This is where I balance being a fan and being like a podcast guy. Because being a fan, I'm like, I'm not reading into this. But when you're trying to create content for a podcast, it's like you got to care about it. Like there's Chris Johnson and Sean McKenzie on Sportsnet out front with their microphones talking about a scrimmage game. Like yesterday, the coverage for that game was outrageous. Like it was like a playoff game the way it was covered. And I'm not going to read too much into that. It was, to me, it was competitive, but at the end of the day, you're not playing full speed. You're not playing against tough competition. There's going to be a little bit of an ease off when you're playing a scrimmage. The goaltending, it's like some people are talking about the goaltending, and it's like I don't want to start with the goaltending controversies in the city already after one scrimmage. Like, come on. Like, I'm done with that. Or let's debate the fourth line. Another thing the city loves to do. It's like it's a scrimmage. Let's take it for what it is. Let's be happy that Nylander ripped a beauty home. Let's be happy that Nick Robertson shot the puck hard and scored. I'm not looking at the negatives. I'm trying to take the positives out of that game. And that's seeing a guy like Mikko Lehtinen move the puck well, or seeing William Nylander play a very good game and be very dangerous. So I'm taking the positives out of that scrimmage. And I'm going to be like, you know what? I'm going to trust that game one. That's when things are going to start to get figured out.
Yeah, it's honest. It's so tough to do is to look at that game and look at any, preseason exhibition game that's ever happened. You try to read into it because you're trying to break things down and you're trying to create content and you're trying to understand what people are saying. But at the same time, it's a blue and white scrimmage, right?
We know better. We know, like, you're just bored if you're debating it. Like, we know, like, things are going to go down on Wednesday. And that's when we're going to be able to sit down and really dissect what is going on with this hockey team and what they need to change and what they need to do going forward.
Well, let's talk about Wednesday then, the NHL season getting underway. An exciting for fans at least, NHL North Division with all Canadian teams. What are you expecting from this? You're going to get to see a lot of Canadian matchups, obviously. Are teams going to get tired of facing other teams in a 7-team division?
Well, I'm hoping for those rivalries that people crave for. Like, we even had, when's the last time the Leafs and the Sens had like a legit rivalry, or even the Leafs and the Habs? Like, when they play each other, it's fun. And being in the same province, being in the same country in closer proximity, and being in the same division, obviously it's exciting for those matchups. But I'm hoping that the Leafs playing those teams, how many times they're playing them, is going to create like epic hatred and epic rivalries. It's going to be epic for the fan bases. Because I know people in Edmonton everybody hates Toronto.
Exactly.
And like, personally, like, I can't stand Oilers fans. So it's gonna be fun, man. What's your guys' opinion on like the sponsoring of the divisions? Because me and my brother got so much blowback about it becoming the Scotia North Division, and it's like, who cares? Like,
you know what? I just don't give a shit, to be honest with you. Like,
exactly.
Realistically, this is $1 billion company that is going out and trying to make some money back for a lot of money they lost last year. And if that's going to be putting Scotiabank on your helmet or calling it the Scotiabank North Division, I don't care. Like, well, really, I don't care.
It's all the same thing, right? Whether these guys are, you look at Scotiabank, who's got their name on the arena that no one can go to. Who the hell cares if they sponsor a division? They throw a helmet logo on there, right? Like, people, it's just, it's another example of people just looking way too far into things and caring way too much about things they probably shouldn't.
And realistically, when you look back at, like, there was a huge stink when the NBA put logos on their jerseys, right? You got the Sun Life logo on the Raptors jersey, but you don't notice it anymore. Like, it's just, it goes away. And this is a business. As much as you don't want it to be, as much as it's their life, like, it's what you do for your spare time on this podcast. But it's a business. They need to make money.
Yeah, exactly. I saw that logo on the helmet, and I'm like, I thought that was there anyways. Like, I looked at it, I'm like, that's new. Like,
they took the team logo off. They took the team logo off and put the sponsor on. Who cares?
I know. It's like, get over it. I personally, get back to your question about the division, I'm most excited for the Oilers and Leafs matchup, because we finally get to see McDavid. Like, we finally get to see McDavid as many times as we do. That's the worst part about him playing at Edmonton is only playing him twice a year. And I just think it's great how we're going to be able to see. There's so many good stars in this country, and every team has their problems. Like, there's no one team that's like, this team's going to dominate this division. It's right up in the air for me. And I expect the Leafs to win because I think they have a good team. But I think the best part about this is just seeing all the other star players on the West Coast that we don't normally see.
Yeah. And how many times have we heard, like, when Toronto goes out and plays a Hockey Night in Canada game in Vancouver, that the Vancouver fans all complain that their games are at 4 o'clock. Like, so many other places hate Toronto. And I'm really hoping that maybe this, like, causes a bit of hatred the other way, because I could care less about Vancouver fans, but apparently they care a lot about us.
Yeah, I know. Everyone hates the Maple Leafs, man. I'm over it. Everyone can't stand us, and I love it. I love it because when there's a Leaf game on, I'm sure if you ask Sportsnet or TSN what the ratings are when a Leaf game's on, and it's a lot higher than all the other hockey teams. So you can hate us all we want. That's why you're playing on an Eastern time and not your own time zone, because the ratings, buddy. Get over it, Canuck fans.
Oh, well, people just don't understand that, right? I mean, I'm a Senators fan who lives in southwestern Ontario.
Like, I don't think we've heard yet if you're a Senators fan.
I can't watch my team play on the TV, and I get that. Like, I get why I can't. It just wouldn't make sense for these companies. Does it suck? Yeah, but what am I going to do? Complain about it? I guess.
It sounds like you're complaining right now.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. I understand why people hate the Leafs though, or make fun of us, or think Leaf fans are a joke, because it's like we come back for nothing every year. Like, what have they shown us? Like, they haven't won a round in 16 years, 17 years. Like, I get why we're the laughing stock, but don't come at me about the time zones on the West Coast. It's like we're playing Eastern time because people want to see the Leafs.
Let's make a weird transition because we're talking about teams that everyone loves to hate, and we just finished seeing a World Juniors in Edmonton, which I know you saw probably a lot of. The Americans, after they celebrate, bring out a trash can, and we just did our podcast recording where I kind of it just didn't make sense to me. It seems really disrespectful, and it's just like yes, they played a great game, but why the hell do that? And I feel like you kind of probably have the opposite feeling to me.
You know what? I just, obviously it doesn't look great for them. They can come out and be like, well, this was our tradition or whatever. It's not a good look. It's really not a good look. But you know what? The Americans have the last laugh. You pull up the finals records against one another, and they must enjoy beating Canadians most of the time in the finals. I'll get over it, but obviously it wasn't a great look. I didn't love it.
How about the? Did you get a chance to watch any of the Leafs prospects? Obviously, I still have no idea how to say his name. Amirov, is that right?
Amirov?
I don't even know.
I'm not even going to take a stab at it either.
I mean, watching a bit of him, like, looked impressive, but the Leafs did a weird thing in the draft here this year where they took pretty much solely European, so we have no idea what to think. Did you get to watch and see anything?
Yeah, I thought, you know what? I don't like to read, and I used to be a mark for like the guys the Leafs drafted, like especially when Matthews and Marner were in the World Juniors, and you kind of had some rumblings about like where guys are getting drafted, or the one year the Leafs were tanking, so you really wanted to see what they were going to get. I try not to read too much in these guys' tournaments, so I wasn't too impressed with what I saw, but I was mostly just focused on Canada, to be honest with you. I didn't really take a look at too many of the other European teams playing each other. I was just more focused on the Canadian team.
Yeah, understandable. I mean, I've been so terrible at watching sports lately. Like,
Yeah.
it's bad to say. Like, I can't. Like, I don't think I've watched maybe one or two Raptors games. Like, it's been tough.
Oh, the NBA is wacky right now too. It's weird, especially with a bunch of teams going down for COVID. That's a weird league. But the World Juniors, I don't love it as much as I used to. Like, I maybe because I'm getting older, and like I don't get as excited about like the guys in that age range. Like, I remember being a kid and those guys would like seem so big and so larger than life, like the Crosby teams or even Taves and Price. And now like I look at them and they're like, oh, they're just a bunch of like little kids, you know? Like, I don't know. I don't love the tournament much as I used to be honest with you.
I used to be the kind of guy who would do all the prep leading up, watch the training camp, and be so into it of who was going to be on this team. Now it's like when the tournament starts, yes, I'm going to watch every game. I'm going to be into it, but I just don't have that, everything kind of into it. And I think the older I get, I kind of realize that, you know what, these are really young kids that have so much pressure on them, especially when they're in our country. Like if that built, like, look at, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago when they finished fourth or whatever it was. And the captain that year, I can't even tell you who it was getting like death threats on Twitter because he missed the penalty shot. Like, it's just, there's so much pressure on these kids. It almost
16-year-old, some of them, right? Like 16-year-old
we
kids.
forget that.
Yeah, and Canadian, obviously, like we're so proud of how we have the best hockey prospects on the planet. But it's a one-off tournament. Like, any team can beat any team in any game. Like, the Americans come out and beat any team. There could be an upset at any time. Like, in a one-off tournament like that, like, I'm not going to be like, oh, like all those years of the Canadian goaltending summits where it's like, we got to talk about the Canadian goaltending. And it's like, it's a one-off tournament. Like, leave these kids alone, man. Like, I think Carter Hart's doing pretty good right now. Like,
man, that was one of the best things to watch in that tournament was, Levi coming out of junior A and playing in
he's phenomenal.
in the best tournament in the world. And he was really good. And I kind of tweeted about it. I tweeted about it going in. Like, he reminded me so much of Carey Price playing that. And maybe it's not fair to do to a young kid, but he was so calm. His rebound control was like A+. There was nothing left in front. Every save looked it looked effortless to save. So that kid really impressed me in that tournament. And maybe that's what I love about the tournament is not the kids that like Cousins that you're looking at and going, okay, he's going to be a star in the NHL. It's the kid that surprises you and kind of puts himself on the map.
Yeah, the Leaf prospect who ruined the tournament for me was Pogge. It's like Justin Pogge, unreal tournament. Guy's gonna be a legend, and then the Leafs have to go out and make a completely rash decision based off that, and it just went. We all know what happened after that.
Oh, you didn't
So
like that trade?
kind of.
Where is he right now?
I don't know. He's probably listening to this. That's what he does now.
He's a great. Oh, do you remember when the Leafs drafted Tyler Biggs?
I know the name, but that's not a good sign.
They took him in the first round, and I went to school for radio. In the first class I was in, they were taking attendance, and there was a kid named Tyler Biggs on the attendance, but he was never there. So to this day, I'm convinced that Tyler Biggs was supposed to be in my radio program after getting drafted in the first round by the Leafs and just fizzled out.
Man, the idea that he sat there and filled out the application knowing he was going in the first, and even in the top half of the NHL draft, he's like, you know what? I need a backup. What if I need to be on radio?
I know. And I'm just like, I swear this is Tyler Biggs. Like, I swear. Yeah, another beauty Leaf draft pick from the past.
Just gone nowhere too. You always think in your head, where does some of these guys go? It's not fair to think, I guess, but where the hell is Justin Pogge? Right? He just fizzled out.
I'm sure he's a great guy, but that was just, they're still recovering from that in a sense.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming on for our first Smitty Middy Show exclusive. I know you just put out a new episode of Talking Buds podcast, so tell the people where they can get it. Tell them what you're all about, and just give them a little
shameless plug.
Exactly. Plug yourself.
Yeah, so our first episode dropped today. First time doing video. We've been doing audio for about 2 years, did about 80 episodes, and then just decided that it's time to start doing some video. So we set up our studio, and you can find our videos on YouTube, Talkin' Buds podcast. We're mainly just an Instagram focused, that's our choice to post everything. And we're going to have some highlights of our episodes and some previews. And we're trying to stay off Twitter a little bit because I can get a little frustrated with Leaf Twitter. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of Leaf Twitter and trying to argue with the people on there, but it is the worst thing on planet Earth.
You just got to stay out of your mentions, man. You can't even look at
it.
You don't even look at what's going on.
Yeah, well, like I go through some of our YouTube comments from the past because we used to just post audio on YouTube, and then one guy's like, I could barely get through this awful podcast. And I'm like, oh, thanks, man.
It's like, why? Like when we did our Ron McLean episode, I don't know, it was a couple months ago. And it's crazy to think we're only 20 episodes in, but either way, somebody mentioned, like, is this plug even still relevant or something? It's like, why, dude? Like, why? Why do you have to, now I have to go and erase it. It seems like a douchebag when it was you.
Know.
And he's sitting at home smiling too. He's like, yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I got him.
That was a good one.
Yeah, you can find us on YouTube, Talking Buds Podcast. You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple, every single podcast place you can get a podcast. And mainly on Instagram is where you're going to see all our updates. And we're very non-analytical podcast. We're very couple beers after the game, talk about what happened type of podcast. So if you're coming there to find out possession numbers, you're coming to the wrong podcast. If you're coming to hang out with a couple buddies and have a beer and talk Leafs, you're coming to the right podcast.
Hey,
Talking Buds podcast. Look us up.
You think that's water, but we're actually into the vodka, maybe. All right. Well, Ryan, thank you very much. Obviously, go and check out the Talking Buds podcast. Also follow Smitty Middy Show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'd like to thank you very much, and we'll wrap this up.
All right, boys. Thank you for having me. Hopefully we can do it again in the future.